Hello, people. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Uncomfortable but Necessary. So, in today's episode, we'll be talking about the cycle of trauma and what it does, how people recycle trauma, and the effects of trauma to individuals and at large to our society. And we're having this conversation because, you know, what this podcast is about, uncomfortable but necessary. These are conversations that are necessary for us to have, even though they might be uncomfortable or be perceived to be uncomfortable, but they are necessary conversations to have because these are life issues. You know, these are true. These are things that people, actual people, living people go through. This is how we talk about people's struggles, talk about how we can live a transformative life, how we can, experience growth in different areas of our lives. We talk about it's an all-round podcast, and the major thing that we talk about are conversations that are necessary for us to have as individuals, as people that want growth, that desire growth, and want to grow. So, once again, welcome to another episode. So, like I said, we're talking about um, trauma, the cycle of trauma, and what it does or the effects it has on individuals as it affects our lives as individuals and as a whole community. Um, I need you to know that we live in a fallen world, and regardless of where you are, regardless of the space or the phase you're in right now in your life, a lot of people had gone through that path before. Some people will still go through that path. And that is not because the world wants to destroy people or, you know, it was meant for your destruction or for your breaking or for your death. It is because we live in a fallen world. I've seen bad things happen to good people, and sometimes, good things happen to bad people. And people often say that, jokingly, that most times people that live the longest are bad people, are evil people. I don't know how true that is, but one thing that I know of a fact, of a truth, not just a fact, is that we all have um, the opportunity to spend eternity. And not just that, we have the opportunity to choose where to spend eternity. So the question is not will you spend eternity. The question is where will you spend eternity? So sometimes we think it's just about we'll just live this life. It is not just about the life that we are used to, this world that we are used to. There is a better world. There is another life after here called eternity. And like the word eternity, it has no time, it has no end, it has no head. It's eternity. It's infinite. All right. So I just need to just point that out because people have often asked, to what end, should I be a good person? When bad things will still happen, when people will still take you for granted, when you still have to go through hurtful situations, when you still have to struggle with traumas, when you still have to go through this and that, let's just all live life based on our own terms, based on what we want, regardless of what happens to other person, regardless of how it affects another person. Let me just be selfish. And trust me, the selfishness of people is what has gotten our world to where it is right now. And you don't want to be a reason why another person goes through trauma. Because one thing about trauma is that sometimes it's not intended, but the traumatic person or the traumatic individual often at one point or the other, you know, be that gateway for another person's trauma. All right. And you might be asking, why are we having this conversation? Like I said, we are in a failing world, and scattered across how we act, how we relate, how we, react, our actions and reactions, our responses, or the way people see world. Because one thing that trauma will often do to people, it distorts that their view, it distorts how they should perceive the world, how they should act, how they should relate in the world that we define themselves. And let it be known that every one of us at one point or the other had gone through some kind of trauma. I needed to say that because some people will be like, I've never been traumatic before. The thing is that sometimes we think before you go through some trauma is until probably your heart got broken, or we are used to the dramatic trauma. For you, probably what you've gone through or what you're going through might not be as traumatic as what we think trauma is all about. Trauma can be trauma is just an event that whenever I'm trying to make this as simple as possible. An event that happened that left you confused, that left you broken, and probably not fully healed from. And each time we remember that, it's just the same way we have good memories. That whenever you remember those things that probably you did in childhood, during your childhood, you laugh, you smile, you just, oh, this was just a small me, and it brings that joy as a result of a good memory you have of your past. The same way trauma works, whenever you remember an event or a situation, instead of you to be joyful about it, instead of it to make you smile, it kind of make you either numb. Sometimes it makes some people to act out. Sometimes it makes some people to almost feel like they're in that situation again. It almost make it present for them again. Some people can start to cry. Some people can start becoming angry, depending on what that situation is. That is to tell you that every one of us have that area of our life, or have experienced that before, that that we have that experience that whenever you remember, or whenever you know you see something that is almost looking like, oh, this thing is sufficing again, it saddens your heart. It it does not bring any form of joy or laughter to you. It's a traumatic experience. And you might be like, is it that deep? We all have bad days. This is not a bad day. You know when, oh, it was just a bad day. You know when something really hits you, when it makes you to start, to ask questions, to question your worth, to question your existence, to question yourself as a person. And that thing, you can say that thing is a trauma or is a traumatic experience to you. So some of us, we had traumatic childhood, probably a child that was beaten for no reason, or probably a child that was always being beaten at school, or even though some of those things were as a result of behavior, probably you behaved in a certain way, and or you lived a certain life, and as a result, a ripple effect of your character or your person got you to where you are. But it's still something you're not proud of. It's still something that each time you remember, it's kind of breaks your heart. It's kind of make you, oh, well, it happens. It's what it is. We can say it's a trauma. And especially some of us in Africa, we try as much as possible to cover some things and lie to ourselves that we are fine, even when we know we are not. When you see yourselves trying to cover a lot of things, trying to max up a lot of things, especially painful situations, and you're not properly healed, as time goes on, it can end up being a traumatic experience for you. What I'm saying is that whenever you find yourself in a difficult space, don't just ignore and just move on. Even though it's beautiful to move on, to keep on living your life, don't allow that thing to make you get stuck. But as much as possible, try to process what you're going through. Try to, you know, process, whether by yourself or with the help of someone else, a specialist or a loved one. Try to go through it with someone, or allow someone go through it with you. For example, you experience the love of a loved one, you lost your job, you got kidnapped, you you probably lost your legs, you know, something that changed your life in a way, something that happened to you that make you have a feeling of pain, grief, loss. These things are what we often overlook, and we just want to continue living our lives. And sometimes, even though it makes us look like we are doing well, you're maxing it up well, and this is now in a situation, we find ourselves in a generation whereby it's almost like, you know, an unspoken who suffer pass kind of attitude. We kind of glamorize our pain, and even though we don't admit that we are experiencing pain, we are almost making it look like, the person that appear to be the strongest, is the strong man. Sometimes it's okay for you to be a strong person, and when you need to cry, you cry. When you need to mourn, you mourn. When you need to grieve, you grieve. When you need to, allow process, allow process, allow process. Because you don't want to pass on trauma. Trauma is one thing that I've noticed that when people kind of, you know, silence themselves, tell themselves I'm okay when they are not. That I don't know if you notice that when you tell yourself you're fine and you're not fine, you start to do what you don't ordinarily do. You start to act in certain way that people that are not probably aware of what you're going through will start asking you, are you sure you're okay? When people start asking you, are you okay? Even when you are trying as much as possible to max it, trust me, you are not okay. I really need to deal with the situation. I think one of the things that helps, or let me say one of the things that, make us recycle trauma is, the feeling of I don't want people to see that I'm like this. I don't want people to know that I'm going, I have weaknesses, or I'm weak in this situation, or I'm weak in this time. It's okay to be a weak person in a situation or at a particular time, because when you do not properly heal from your hurt or your traumatic experience, without you don't plan to, you know you're not planning to make another person go through trauma, but what you will end up doing is creating a traumatic experience for someone else. I've seen people that grew up, seeing their parents fighting, shouting, doing some certain things. Even though while the person was a child, had that kind of experience in their childhood, most of them, when they are grown up, they don't plan to be a bad spouse, they don't plan to be a bad person, but as a result of what they had seen over time, the kind of things they were exposed to, they start to live a kind of life. They start, it kind of shape their perspective about marriage. If the child is a boy, it starts to see women as kind of an object. If the child is a woman, she starts to probably see that, oh, women are lesser, or they should be beaten. I've seen people, or I've heard of people, when they say things like, they believe that they should be beaten by their spouse. They believe that, being beaten in a marriage is a sign of love. In fact, I've heard of people that, you know they don't believe that we are doing relationship, or we are in a marriage, and we are not fighting. Why is it so calm? Why are we not raising our voices? you know because when we talk about trauma, sometimes we think, is where someone in a dark place alone. No, these are people that we see that they are living their life, they look fine. But trust me, as a result of the way you respond to life, as a result of the way you view life, we can know that this is not normal, and it's as a result of trauma. Trauma can come, it might not even come from your own personal experience, it can come from what you've been seeing. Probably you were used to, everyone around you, everyone that were always coming back to their parents' house, even after they were married. Even though it never happened to you while you are a child or while you're growing up, but this is what you've been seeing. This is what you have known. It's a traumatic experience, trust me, because it can shape your ideology. It can shape the way you view marriage. It can shape the way you feel about the family setting. And it starts to tell you, oh, okay, it's like this thing is not built to last. You now start having some ideology has, that's why nowadays we have lots of people coming up with different ideologies, saying this. Everybody is now a philosopher. you know you don't see people start saying things like, there is no forever, there is no for better, for worse. We are trying to change some things based on what we've been saying, based on what we hear, based on other people's experiences. We are trying to build a reality from that. Sometimes it's from a place of trauma. You need to heal. You need to tell yourself, oh, this is okay. It might be that experience, but this is not the ideal experience. For some of us, we were used to, you know, some kind of poverty lifestyle, as a result of where we came from or our environment. I've seen people that while growing up, the only time you eat a whole egg, I mean, the egg as a whole, or you have a full protein on your food, it's either a birthday, or you are having some kind of celebration in the family, probably Christmas, New Year. Aside those days, is either you share the egg, or you're being given some kind of pieces of the fish. That is how they eat protein. So such a person now probably grows up, or even as a young person or still a child, goes to someone else's house and is seeing everybody having a whole egg, and he knows there's no party going on anywhere. The person starts asking a question, these people are wasting food, or it will be like, oh, they are spoiling them. Some things that you saw while growing up, you're like, this person is spoiled brat. Is probably because it's a testament to your lack, is a testament to the lack environment you grew up in. And sometimes you don't see this thing as trauma. You feel like, oh no, it's not trauma, it's just no. Because you start to see your experience as the ideal. And anything that conflicts with what you've believed, or what you've seen, or what you've known, you see these things as abnormal. And that's why people often say things as, this is normal. I'm asking, is it your normal or the normal? A lot of things that we have termed normal is as a result of our pain, it's as a result of our, the things we struggled with, it's as a result of the things we have shortage of, as a result of, the areas that we are, it's as a result of our lack or the kind of environment we grew up. I think we're going to have a part two of this because I'm building something. I'm trying as much as possible not to rush, not to skip some things because I'm going somewhere. Okay. So let me just wrap up with this. Any 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 situation at all that you're in right now, and all it reminds you of is the past, your past, or another person's past, and it's almost making you look like that is the best or that is the ideal. You need to ask yourself a genuine question: where or how did I arrive here? Is this experience the same as every other person's experience? Because sometimes we make our experience, it's just like some people making a standard as result of their own experiences. Because of my experience, we feel like, oh, this is the standard. No, but that could be the least. In fact, it should not even probably be part of the ideal. You know, so I need you to start questioning. I'm mapping up already. We are going to have a part two, and that is where we are really go in depth into how we cycle, or how trauma go through a cycle, how we pass on cycle, trauma from one generation to the other without planning to, without meaning to. We meant no harm, but this is what is happening, and how we affect our environment. Because a traumatic child we end up being a traumatic boss, you know, will be a traumatic parent, will be a traumatic grandparent, and other a lot of things that have been said to us or we are saying to another person is as a result of our trauma. So one thing I want to leave you with is I need you to start questioning everything you believe. Especially Christians, sometimes we think some beliefs should not be questioned. Should not be questioned. We think some ideologies, some things should not be questioned. We should question. In fact, you should start from questioning the things you believe, the things you call values. Why are they your values? How did you get there? Is it from a bitter? Because I've seen people, you know, live their life or have a kind of a purpose or a vision from their pain. And this is not because they've healed, but because they're just trying to max around, they're trying to ignore what the hurt they've gone through, or their pain or their trauma. They're trying to max it and just pretend like that is not there. I need you to start questioning everything you do. This is one thing I need you to do for me. I need you to question your beliefs, your values, the things you think is the standard or your ideal. I need you to ask yourself, how did I arrive here? Was it from a place of trauma? Why do I ask this way when this thing happened? I've seen some people walk out of relationships when they start seeing someone is being committed to them. It's not because they're a bad person, it's because they are afraid of commitment. Now ask yourself, why are you afraid of commitment? Have you been committed in the past and you got hurt? As funny enough, this traumatic experience might not even happen to you personally or directly. It could be probably from stories of other people, or you've seen. I've seen people that their trauma was as a result of what happened to their parents or their aunts or someone they knew. And they were like, oh, this thing, I will never allow this person. And sometimes we said all those things and we don't know that is trauma speaking. Even though those are valid things that had happened. But should they be the ideal? Should they be your standard? Should you live your life based on another person's experience? And that's why sometimes we find ourselves, you know, living the life we should have lived through other people. That's why sometimes some parents are trying as much as possible to live their life through their children. These are things that are not intended. They don't mean to, they don't intend to, but this is what happens. Probably a season of your life that you missed, or something that you wish you have done, and you think you don't have the opportunity to do it again. You're not trying to do that thing and living it out by decisions you make for your children. That is trauma, because you're not allowing that person to live their own life from their own potential. You're like some parents, you got far as they want to decide what you wear, want to, regardless of how old you are, who you marry, how you marry, where you marry, what course you study, the job you take. They just want to kind of have control. And sometimes they might need to mean well, but they are trying as much as possible to probably live a life they should have lived, or trying to so much make you safe, not to make the mistakes they made. As I said, I'm wrapping up. I need you to ask yourself, what you call love, is it really love? How you express love, how you express kindness, how you express the things you express, why do you express them that way? The things you hold so dear, they are like values or ideologies. How did they end up being things of value to you? Are they from trauma? Is there something you're running from? And see, you need to do this exercise only if you're planning to be sincere, because you can still go through this and still lie to yourself. Sometimes you try not to want to, don't want to go to that direction. Oh no, you don't want to work that memory. You need to. And probably you might not need to do it alone. You might need the help of a counselor or therapist, a trusted friend, someone that can help you go through that process to heal. Because trust me, until we start to heal as individuals, our families, our communities, our nation, our world will continue to be hurting. And that is why sometimes the bad government that we see around us is as a result of people that have gone through trauma. It is trauma of lack that will make people to want to acquire and acquire, even when they know there's nothing else to be acquired, even when they know they have more than enough to take them through generations to come. Even when they know they're about to die, they are still so, there's just this, they're just so, it's just so, yoked up in them. It's like obsession. Even when it gets to, even when it will warrant them to steal as much as it is theirs, as long as it has their name on it. These things are trauma. The bad government we blame, the bad leadership we blame, the bad parents we blame, some of the time is as a result of trauma. And before we start to judge them, we need to start judging ourselves. Because your own looks minimal, probably because you're not yet a parent, probably you're not in leadership position, or probably because you're not in government. So we can't really, you're not in that light, you're not in that limelight, you're not that celebrity. So we can't judge you. You we are judging is because they're up there, their life is like an open space and we can see through. That's why I needed to take this exercise and do it sincerely. Ask yourself questions. What are the things I'm here to heal from? Sometimes it's a loss that you experience, or probably a grief that you did not process well. Sometimes it could even be some lies that you've told yourself over time, and you're living your life based on a lie. You need to come out of this. You need to come out of it. So this is what we'll be wrapping up this episode. Like I said, it's going to be a series. And in the next series, continuation of this topic, we'll be talking about we'll be extensively talking about different traumas and how it affects people's and communities, how it plays out, in the marriage, how it plays out in parenting, how it plays out in leadership, how it plays out, in our community, and how it affects the world we see. Because we see war going on, kidnapping going on, stealing going on, killing going on. Like, who raised these people? Is it that people just grew up and they just chose their passion and they're like, oh, when I grow up, I want to be a kidnapper? Is that how it happened? We're going to go through this process together and see how these people end up being who they are and how we can save ourselves and our next generation from falling prey of this lifestyle. And until I see you again on another episode of Uncomfortable but Necessary, do have a blessed one. And do not forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel if you're yet to, and turn on the notification bell so that anytime an episode is dropped, you'll be notified. And please feel free to like, share, and comment. Do have a blessed one. Bye.